So today, as you know, we're about to begin the process of working with faculty and hopefully explaining what our process is for promotion and for midterms. Also, we feel like this is really helpful in a lot of ways. I'm hoping that mentoring committees are on this call, also hoping that we have department heads and associate department heads, because part of this is as a young faculty, maybe you're just starting with AgriLife extension or AgriLife research. It's important to really see what it's going to look like on the other side in 3 years, or if you're midterms, or 5 years, or whatever that looks like for you as you go forward for full promotion. And so we're hoping to answer a lot of those questions and to help prepare you to think through what you're doing today and how you can be successful. And I think I'll let Amir speak here in just a second, but our goal is for you to be successful. We want you to be successful. So I would hope that you will visit this website, and we'll put this address in the chat before we're done today. But this website will have both, you can look at the arrows, the calendar, you'll see that there listed. You'll see, and that'll have all the dates for both midterm and promotion. And then you'll see how you can get connected with these help sessions, both the workshops that we're doing, one's today, one will be coming up in the near future, and then also these candidate hours. The team links are all already listed in that place on the Promotion and Tenure Coles Faculty Affairs website. Then the other two arrows you'll see, AgriLife Research and Extension Guidelines for Promotion Process. That's the full document that talks about how the process flows from the candidate to the departments, to the peer review committee, back to the department head, then to the associate directors, and then to the directors. In our world, in AgriLife Extension and Research, this is, I think, the best news for y'all, is that the ultimate decision rests with the directors of AgriLife Research and AgriLife Extension as to who is successful in their endeavor to become promoted and those who are denied. So we control our destiny as we go through it, and we're very happy with that process. So these are things we're going to talk about today. So let's get into that. So we're going to start off with a position description. So the most important item that you can be working on right now, whether you're looking at promotion or annual review, we've asked all of our department heads and associate department heads and center directors to look at everyone's position descriptions and make sure it is accurate as to what they are going to be doing. The reason this is because when we look at it, both the department head and then the peer review committee looks at it, as well as the director's office level looks at it, we're going to say, is this person doing what matches up in that position description? So that's why this is a key part of the process of you developing that even right now. So you should be reviewing that. You should be making sure it lines up. We get questions quite often, what if my position description has changed over the years? Well, the good news is the department head will be writing a letter, and in that department head, we would ask them to discuss those changes that have occurred. But your current position description is what we're asking for, and will be part of what your dossier that we put together. So it needs to be accurate, it needs to be current. Anything else, Amir?
No, Dan, no, nothing. Thank you.
Okay. I might have you in a minute just talk about, because you've had departmental responsibilities on the mentoring side of the committee, but at least I know on the extension side, we have required that every faculty member have a mentoring committee. And so if you're new and that hasn't happened yet, we would like to hope that process begins at least within about 6 months of you being there and is completed by the first year that you have that intact mentoring committee in place that is already starting to give you guidelines. So what the mentoring committee is first made up of people that you believe that will help you be successful in your career. If you're AgriLife Research, the only thing we ask is that the chair of that committee be AgriLife Research. if you're AgriLife Extension, we ask that the chair of that committee, of that mentoring committee, be AgriLife Extension. The other members could be outside the department, could be inside the department, could be over, if you're extension, could be on the research side, could be on the teaching side, the college side. And the goal is who do you feel comfortable with, and who does the department head think that is going to help you be successful in that? So we recommend at least 3 members as part of that mentoring committee. I would say that in addition to an official mentoring committee, there's no doubt when we hire you out, the department faculty, they want you to be successful as well. So it doesn't mean that you just reach out to that group of 3 or whatever, but you're also reaching out to everyone else that you feel like would do collaborative work and can give you advice and mentoring you to help be successful as you go to midterms and as you go to promotion. So from a department standpoint, any advice, Amir?
In the past, prior to 2022, the O2 faculty, O6 and O7 used to be evaluated by just one committee at the department level. And then the case would go to an AgriLife, actually they used to call it AgriLife peer review committee, or at the college level, actually. It's a faculty affairs peer review committee. But since then, that has been, done differently. Now, O2 cases, are done at the departmental level, and then they go to the college, and they go all the way to the provost. Now, O6 and O7, since actually they became separate in the process from the O2, is done differently, and that is why the mentoring committee has a bigger role now. I used to do the departmental. I used to chair the committee at Soil and Crop Sciences department when we had all of the 3 positions were done together. But now here, the mentoring committee has a bigger role to help the candidate with developing the dossier, the list of letter writers, and that applies only to promotion because we don't need letter writers for the midterm reviews.
Yes.
And so what I'm trying to emphasize here, if we have any mentoring committee members sitting at this meeting, is that their role here is bigger than what it used to be in the past.
Yes, that's really good. And part of that, we would expect the mentoring committee led by the chair to meet with that person throughout the year, but then at least on an annual basis presents a document to the associate department head, which is ultimately a SWOT analysis, just talking about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that this person may have as they continue their career, and what would help them be successful in their career. All right, so this is the process that we go through for AgriLife research and extension. And I'll kind of talk through the general things, and then Amir, if you have anything specific, because this is the AgriLife research side.
Yes.
So in this, if you take a look at it, you'll see the circled area that's in red. And this is, if you're listening today, this is what you're involved with, and your mentoring committee is helping you in the process of developing your dossier. And so as you develop that, there are going to be certain elements, which we'll talk about in a minute, that go into that. But your mentoring committee and other people within the departments, as well as even people within AgriLife research in this case, could be helpful in reviewing that and giving you critique before you go and put it together and put it up into Interfolio. Ultimately, these documents will go into Interfolio. You need to work with your department head as to whether they're going to ask you to do it directly or if they're going to do it through their administrative group. Both of them do it. Departments do it in 2 different ways, and majority of them, actually, the department assistant is the one that uploads it. But just so you know, that's one way that it happens. The other thing is that during this time frame, you'll see it says over there, external review letters obtained by the department head. So the department head is responsible for that. You are not responsible for getting the external letters of review. The department head department head assistant generally is the one that's going to be asking for those. We'll talk all about that process before the end of the day. But in that, all those documents will be put into Interfolio, and then and that for midterm needs to be done by May the 17th. You'll see that over here on the side. If you look at my cursor, May the 17th for midterms, that's the drop dead date when they have to be put up into the system for Interfolio, and for promotion it's September 20th. I would let you know that we are going to ask you to work with your department to nominate yourself for, if you're planning on going up for midterms or plan on going up for promotion, we're going to ask you to work with your department head to let them know that that's your intention by April the 19th. So that's the date that's required. You can always take your name back. You know, if you put it up and you decide by May 17th, no, I'm not going to continue forward, you're welcome to do that. But after that April 19th, that will be the drop dead date to let us know that you intend to go up for midterms or promotions, either one. So both of those, not just midterms, but both. Why do we do that for promotion? Because it takes a while to get external letters. And so that's why we do that simultaneously. And the reason it's important to get it done there, in order to get May 17th, we work with the college to get the cases built in Interfolio. So that takes some time as well. So that's why we have that particular date. Then the process will go through the peer review committee. That committee is made up of 10 individuals plus one non-voting chair. The non-voting chair acts really as kind of an intermediary between the director's office and the committee. So if there's questions, and that person is also a non-voting, so it is a 10-member vote, and that each committee member is required to give a vote of either yes or no, or abstain, or recuse. So they're required, so there will be a vote. There'll be 10 votes, and it'll look like one of those categories as we go through. And then that peer review committee, now this is for somebody that's 100% research. And so far it's identical for people that are 100% extension appointments. And so when that occurs on, in this case, July 9th, November 4th, that report from that committee needs to be extended to the department head and the center director and the unit leader. Okay, we have the word unit leader here because not every person within the extension, at least, and there may be some of this within the AgriLife research realm, not everyone is in a department that has a professorial rank. There are people that are in units within extension that have professorial rank. So that's what we're talking about here when we talk about unit leaders. Primarily, most people are going to have a department head, and if they're at centers, they're going to have a center director. And so this is where that department head and center director would review the peer review committee recommendations, would review in the case of, and again, for midterms, as Amir said, there's no external letters, only for promotion. But that center director, department head would not only look at the peer review committee, but they would also look at the external review letter from the department. And then they, based off of that and based off of their own review of you, they would write a letter. Each one of those, both the department head and when appropriate in centers, the center director will write letters. Department head, we really look at giving us an idea of how you are performing within the context of the mission of the department. The center director, how you look within the context of the mission of the center. And so that's how they will be reviewing you as they look at your both documents as well as the peer review committee recommendation, as well as the external review letters that have come into the departments. And so even if you're at a center, you have, right, Amir, you have a department affiliation, and the department head still is the one that's responsible for getting letters, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So once that is all put together, then by, again, for midterms, July 23rd, for promotion, November 20th, that would then pass to the associate director's level. and Amir in this case would review the information, write a recommendation, and then work with that director to make a decision, the final decision, which in the case of midterms would be late August. In the case of the promotion would be hopefully before the end of the year, which would be late December, and generally just before Christmas. If you are successful in promotion, if you're going through the promotion process, then that promotion will be effective September 1st that next year. So what this is 2024. So if at the end in December they say, yes, you are successful, then it would be September 1st of 2025 when that promotion would go into effect and any compensation that would be realized based off of that promotion. Anything to add to this on the AgriLife research side?
Well, as you realize here, there is a process for midterm and for promotion. In the case of the midterm, basically the candidate receives feedback, constructive feedback as they get ready to submit a full, dossier for promotion to associate professor. And so that is going to be reflected in that report from the director. When you get even when you get a favorable response and letter from the director, there is always going to be some, mention of some points for improvement, even for associate going to assistant going to associate. So that feedback is going to be given so they can actually improve the process in the future.
I'll move on, and we're going to ask for questions once we get through this process of just talking through and asking about.
Yeah, and by the way, if I can add to this, while you are looking at this PowerPoint as a resource, and then when you go back and listen to the recording, make sure that you actually have the calendar also on hand, and you also have the guidelines, because the three documents complement each other. Basically, this is taken from the guidelines, actually, so this is just, shown in a PowerPoint format, but all of that information is found there between the calendar and the guidelines.
Yeah, that's good, because that's text, and this is just a pictorial view of what it looks like. Good. This is 100% extension. And so as you look at the 100% extension, you will see it is identical up till we get to this box. We had in the previous version, in the previous version, we have center director and department head. Well, this is for somebody that's 100% AgriLife extension. And so it is the same process, except it is going through, in this case, the peer review committee for extension. The other one was the peer review committee for AgriLife research. This group would go through the peer review committee for extension. They would be all ad-locked faculty to extension, both on the AgriLife research and AgriLife extension side. To the best of our ability, we have represented different departments to make sure that there is a kind of across the board representation within AgriLife research and AgriLife extension, as far as that would be the makeup within what we have as units within our groups. So that recommendation in this case, when we get to this level, would go to both the head and the associate department head. Both of them would write letters of support. And so, or in review, not necessarily in support, but in review of the candidate, and then also would respond to the peer review committee, the external letters, and the candidate's dossier in that letter that they would then pass up to the associate director and the director's office. Same timeline. I'm really thankful that we try to mirror AgriLife research and extension, both in process as well as in timing. Now, this is the one that looks really busy, but it's not as difficult as you might think, because what it does is this is for somebody that has a dual appointment. So AgriLife extension, AgriLife research, majority appointments. So for example, if you're 60% AgriLife research and 40% AgriLife extension, you will still be driven by the AgriLife research side of the equation. It doesn't mean there's not going to be input from extension, but the whole cases are driven on the research side. If you're 60% AgriLife extension and 40% AgriLife research, then your promotion process will be driven on this extension side of the equation. So just going back to the same concept, you're still going to build a dossier. You're still going to work with your mentoring committee. The department head is still looking at reaching out to external review letters. They're going to make it clear as to what the person's appointments are and what the expectations are for that person with a joint appointment. And then it's going to go to both peer review committees. And so we actually call the peer review committees the majority peer review committee and the minority peer review committee. And so as we look at that, if you're ad-locked to research, then what would happen is extension would write a minority report or an extension report based off of that person's extension performance. That extension peer review committee, that chair would then pass it over to the AgriLife research. This is if you're a research appointment, okay, predominantly ad-locked to research. Then the extension would pass their report over to the AgriLife research report. AgriLife research chairman would attach that with the AgriLife research report, and that report, both of them together, would go up to the associate department head for extension, department head, and center director as appropriate if you're center-based. So still being driven by AgriLife research with input from the AgriLife extension if you have a majority research appointment. If you have a majority extension appointment, it's the opposite. So that would be driven by AgriLife extension. When we get up to the peer review committee level, the research peer review committee would review that person's dossier, external letters, if it's a promotion case, and they would make a report of that person's research review, and then they would pass that over to the extension peer review committee. That committee would attach it to their report and pass it up to, again, the head of department, associate department for extension, center director, if when appropriate. And they would both write a letter that as to their review of the candidate, and then also respond to anything that happened below as far as external letters and other comments that may have been added to the peer review committee. All right, so then when that's decided, then it will move up to the both associate directors. So in this case, Dr. Abraham and I would look at that together, and we would make some comments and review it together. And then we would pass it up to the two directors. The two directors would confer and then decide by the end of the year whether that person is successful in their promotion. That was a little bit more complicated, but I hope you kind of understand how it works. Again, that's if you're extension majority, it's going to be driven by extension with input from research. And if you're research majority, it's going to be driven by research with input from extension. Amir, anything to add to that?
Well, nothing to add, but we have in rare cases, we have 50-50 appointments, and you will not know whether to call that majority report or minority report. But in those cases, there is always an agreement as to where the decision of promotion rests.
Yeah.
And I can give examples, but but these are very rare cases.
Yeah, really it's going to be driven by your ad lock in that case. And that's already been decided before we even hired you. So good.
Yeah.
So let's stop for a second. What I just explained to you was the process. And in a minute, we're going to go through your dossier. We're going to go through the external letters and all of that. But any questions regarding the process that I just described? And you can raise your hand, or you can open up your mic and just ask the question either way. And Amir, I can't see the chat, so if you would monitor that.
I will monitor that for you. If you can go back to the previous slide, Dr.
Sure.
So does anyone here have a teaching component that they want to ask about? And I think we have another slide to talk about this, Dr. Hill.
Yeah, we should have put that in after this. I did.
Along the way. But if you have any questions about that, I will be glad, or Dr. Hill will be glad to answer that question. Let's say that you have a teaching component somewhere at one of the system universities, right? And you are an AgriLife research faculty member.
Yes.
So you might wonder how your teaching is going to be evaluated, right? And I can assure you that in this case, we don't have a dual purpose process. It's just one process. And so your teaching is not going to be evaluated at the faculty affairs, and it will not, it will just be one process. In that case, the department head is going to speak to your teaching component. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's several I know that have both teaching responsibilities at another university as well as a teaching appointment that may be on this call, but then also people that have what we call teaching overloads. And regardless of that, that's the good news. Amir is correct. The department head will evaluate. Dr. Klein, the executive associate dean, has said, yes, we definitely will just rely on the department head to give us their input with respect to that person's teaching. They will not go through the committee at the department, and they will not go through faculty affairs and through the college teaching committee. So Javier, it looks like somebody, you have a question with your hand up. So if you want to ask that, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Are these dates valid regardless from when the candidate started the appointment? For instance, my appointment started in January.
Yep. So, yes, so if you, depending on how many years that you've gone, the way that extension works is that if you have completed 4 years, 4 years are completed, then you can put your products, you can put your promotion forward for consideration, your packet forward for consideration. From our standpoint, while a department head could actually allow you to go up earlier, and I would highly recommend that that only be done with the encouragement of a department head. But normally we say 5 years, and in the world of extension, it's 5 years that you would not be promoted until the 5 years have been completed. So you can begin the process the 4th year, but knowing that it will be on September 1st of, in this case, 2025, you would have completed your 5 years at that moment. And I'll let Amir talk about AgriLife research for next, and then we'll get to that next question.
And that you know, the same is true. We sometimes we have faculty members who have been here only 2 years or even 1.5 years, and they want to go for midterm. And in that case, if the department head actually approves it and recommends it, we go ahead with that. So the date of appointment does not change the deadlines of the calendar, if that is the question.
So I did see another hand up, and all I see is yeah.
Yes, it was me. My name is Lina. Hi, everyone. In a similar question, I am interested to know. I guess you already answered in some way. For the midterm package, it depends basically on the candidate along with the department head to see if I can submit it within 2 or 3 years, right?
Right. Yeah. I think, I think if you think about the mentoring committee being involved, it would be good for you to have 2 years and then go up for promotion. So by the 3rd year, you know where you stand and what you need to improve in. So it gives you 2 more years to work on that. Does that make sense? That would be my recommendation.
Okay, and this is the part that I'm a little bit confused. When we talk about 2 years, are we talking about full calendar year, or let's say I started in 2022 February? 1 year would be February 2023. Just to clarify that, please.
Yeah, so 2023, 2024, and then you could go up for promotion because you can go ahead and commit, and then May 17th is after those 2 years, right?
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm really speaking mostly from the extension, 2 to 3 years, because you really need to get a track record to see where you're at. Because if you go too early, then it's really hard to judge as a committee as to are they really on track, or have they completed the things that they need to complete in time. So I think 2 years is kind of in my world, my recommendation would be a minimum. And so in your case, it would cover, because you'd have the 2 full years. And then if you go up through it, you're not going to really know. You'll be 2.5 years into it, right? Before you actually get your results back as to, and it'll be a recommendation. It's not a approve or just unapprove. It's saying,
okay.
All right. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. And Amir, you might jump in on this. When we
Sure.
look at midterms, midterm is not is really for your benefits, where you can look and say, get a critique through the same process, except for external letters, to the same peer review committee, that a peer review committee. It may not be exactly the same when you go up for promotion, but a peer review committee of outside your discipline that would look at it and say, yes, this person is on track. That's really the question that we would be asking them. And is this person, what does this person need to improve on? What are they doing really well that they need to keep going on? So it's always not necessarily the negative. It's like, hey, this person's knocking out of the park here. They need to keep going. They've identified themselves as a leader here. In addition to that, they need to begin to work on this area as well, because it's part of their position description, right? It's always going back to that. Very good question.
Yes, and so the midterm review is an opportunity for the candidate to go through the whole process. So they get familiar with the process when they get ready to submit to associate professor. The recommendation is to go for midterm review between 2 to 3 years, right? But some go earlier, and these cases actually come as we appoint faculty who have past experience. They have been an assistant professor and they accepted an assistant professor job. They were not appointed as associate professors, right? And they have, a lot of applications, a lot of experience, a lot of service. And so they are advised to go early by the department head or the center director in that case. Does that make sense?
And it's not unusual for that actually to be part of the discussion as you're being hired, they see that you've already established a record someplace else. And I think the question on the midterm is, they're going to ask is, how have you done since you've come to Texas A&M? Are you still looking like you're continuing that on? Good question. Was there another question that I saw?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So can we go back to the calendar if possible? Okay. So let's say I go up for midterm review and I'll upload everything on Interfolio or either myself or the department by May 17, and it seems that a decision would be made late August. Is it possible to, assuming everything will come back positive and I have worked before in another role position outside A&M, is it possible to go up for promotion, let's say by November 20th of this year? Just a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, no, because remember that you need to have that in there by September 20th, and they need to get letters. So it would be the next year before you could even possibly go up next, if that makes sense. And that should, in my recommendation, 39 years in this and being on peer review committees for about 4 years, that it's really important to make sure that you have the support of your center director, if that's possible, if that's the case, and the department head before you even consider doing that. And that's a conversation you should have with those people.
Right. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thought there might have been another hand. No?
No.
Okay. So this is what your dossier, we do not have a form that you put your dossier into. We give you some level of freedom in how that looks, but there are certain things that it's going to have. And number one is your position description. So we're going to ask you to, or your department department administrator to upload that into the Interfolio. Then there's a 3-page summary of your work. And that's the second document that's in the dossier. And it serves as a narrative to complement your CV. It's not to reiterate what you have in your CV. It explains how you translated your philosophy and research, teaching, service, outreach, extension into impacts at the state, local, national, international groups. I'm reading this because I think it actually says it really well. For a 100% research appointment, for example, teaching usually involves graduate student, postdoctoral mentoring. That's the same thing for extension. We do expect our extension faculty to be involved in graduate student education. Maybe not postdoc, but also graduate is important. And then the third part is an annotated CV, and I'll have Amir in a minute. I'll show a slide and he'll explain what that is. But the goal is in this is not to just put out a whole bunch of lists. It is to explain what, and this is particularly with that 3-page letter, in the area of what you were hired for. So if you're an extension specialist, how have you established yourself as a leader? And at the associate, going from assistant to associate, we at least want leadership within the state. And if you're going up for full promotion, we're looking at national, international levels of leadership. How are you establishing yourself a leader in the state with stakeholders? And then also, how are you establishing yourself as a leader within your subject matter area? Those are 2 things. And how do you do that within the context of your position with extension, research, teaching, service, etc. In a minute, Amir, I'll show the annotator, but sure. I did see another hand.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing here, and that is how to write the impact statements. Because I have seen some faculty members actually writing philosophy about their philosophies, and that is not what is meant and what is expected. You're expected to write impact statements, how you translated those philosophies into actual impact. And sometimes you might need to assign some dollar figures to impact, which is not easy to do. Like, for example, if you're a breeder, how many acres are under cultivars that you have released? What about cost saving in fungicide application and herbicide application from a technology that you developed? Things along that nature. So you need to show impact. And my advice to the candidate is that you might need to look at an example dossier of one of your colleagues, not to just follow closely, but to get inspired by, because we encourage creativity in how you do things. You need to write it as your own dossier and not just follow somebody else's blindly.
Good. Very good.
Dr. Ibrahim?
Yes.
Sorry for the intrusion. I just wanted to make sure you saw the 2 questions that were in the chat.
Oh, okay. Just a second. Sorry.
That's great.
So there is a question from Nuria regarding timeline. How long after starting the appointment as an assistant professor would you be expected to present the documentation for midterm? And it is 2 to 3 years actually from the day of appointment, right? But some might go earlier because they have established some track record in another institution before they came. So that the recommendation is 2 to 3 years for the midterm, 5 years for the promotion. But sometimes I've seen some faculty members who go for a midterm this year and then next year they submit for promotion to associate professor. It happens. Does that answer the first question?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, so I started in June 2022. So I would be, too short to do it this year because it would not be 2 years. But if I presented all the documentation for the midterms next year, I would be like closer to the 3-year limit. So right. What would you recommend in this case?
Well, in this case, I recommend that you visit with the department head.
Okay.
Because right now you're at 1.5 years. It depends on how your dossier looks like now, how your CV looks like now. So the department head or center director might advise you to go early this year. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a discussion that you might need to have with the head or unit leader.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, always. You should be talking every year during your annual evaluation about this, and that's good. So,
Yeah,
generally,
there is another question from Mona
I would-
about how dates of the midterm review and promotion change if a candidate uses a 12-week of maternity leave for the start date. Well, again, the calendar dates the calendar does not change because it's like the process is done in one whole given year. So we don't have like 2 meetings for the peer review committee, right? We don't have 2 days for submission. It happens in 1 year, from January the 1st to the time when you hear back from the director, right? So if you have a maternity leave for 12 weeks, I don't know, this is not an easy question to answer in this case. So how active are you going to be during those 12 weeks is a question. So that might actually give you a reason to submit for postponing of your midterm review or even the promotion in that case. So
yeah, 2 ways. Again, talk to your department head about that. But as you're going for promotion, it does. There have been cases where, because of maternity leave, that people have been given additional time before they go up for promotions. Midterm is not as big a deal on that. I think, midterm is really an assessment as to where you are in the process of getting promoted. It's not whether you're going to get. There's no negative to it, other than learning more about yourself and being able to take that if there are some things you need to change on. So, but if it's promotion, that's something definitely you want to talk to the department head as to whether you're ready or not as you go forward. That's good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just one, for some contracts, I don't know if all contracts are like this or not, but what if the midterm review actually is kind of a kind of review that will extend your position to a 6-year? So I don't know if this is common in AgriLife research, but specifically in a contract says that you will be evaluated after 3 years, and then we will make decision about the next 3 years. So that's why I'm asking this question, because that, to me, that midterm is kind of an evaluation that define the next 3 years.
Now, I'll let Amir jump in here, but that would be a separate evaluation from this. This is evaluation for promotion from assistant to associate professor. I think the evaluation for a contract would be a different evaluation, a different period. So
exactly, yeah, and you're absolutely right, Dan. So that differs when you talk about a contract. But you might need to actually set a separate meeting with me or me and Dr. Hale and talk about those. But that is specific question.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
no. And when you have questions like that, go to the department head. They'll help you with that, and we encourage that. We're just helping explain the big process, and they know more about how it works within their department, and they probably have seen, many of them have seen how it works in certain situations. Extension, we don't have those kind of contracts, so I can't speak directly to it. Okay, so we've gone. So explain what an annotative CV is, Amir.
Okay, so it helps when you spend time trying to perfect this aspect of the dossier, listing your references in a given order, and actually including the impact factor and sometimes citations. So every journal has an impact factor that you need to list at the end of every citation, at the end of every reference. And we require that you at least provide like 3 impacts after 3 publications. If you want to do it for every single paper you published as a peer-reviewed paper, that is even better. See, just like a brief description of what this paper is about. How did it contribute to science? What's the impact of that paper? And again, I advise you to look at some example dossiers to see how colleagues have done this part of the documentation and the dossier. Another aspect of annotation is sometimes the reviewers would like to see who among the authors is your student or postdoc if you're not listed as a senior author, right? They wonder, I mean, how did you contribute to that paper? So you might need to have like a specific symbol for a student as a lead, postdoc as a lead, with you as a senior author or the submitting author of the paper. So try to be creative at providing a system of annotation to the different citations in the dossier. And the best place to see that is just by looking at an example dossier.
How about, just examples of publication tables and what's important?
And here, even though actually, if you look at the previous slide, you have listed the impact factor of the individual papers, we still recommend that you include all of the impact factors for all journals that you have published in a descending or an ascending order. Maybe a descending order looks more impressive as it puts the most high impacted journal at the top. And also, if you can actually provide a bar graph like this, showing the number of papers that you have published every year, and another one for the citations that you have received every year, that will be even better. So this specific graph shows the number of citation per year, but we also recommend that you provide another bar graph that shows the number of publications that you have published per year. Okay.
Good. All right, so this is the grants summary chart that we have that will be asked to be put after as part of your CV, or I think the one thing is this is actually a separate document from your CV, but make sure that what you put in your CV matches this. Because what I have seen at times is you do have a list of grants and contracts within your CV, and you either didn't include everything or doesn't match up with what this form is. Most people on the peer review committee are going to look at this form and probably over what they might read in your CV as far as looking at all the details, other than what you might have annotated within your CV as far as grants.
Yep.
So I would want to point out that when we put grants and contracts, notice it says user fee, gifts, and in-kind contributions. All of those are important. And so, for example, within extension, we have many people that allow us to use their equipment. That's an in-kind contribution, or that's in one way might be a gift. So you need to kind of develop a value of that use of that equipment in your research and include that here. There may be people that would allow you to use their ranch or their farm or crops to be able to set up a trial that you couldn't do otherwise, couldn't do at the center. And so that's another in-kind contribution. So we encourage you to think broader about what the resources that you have received to run your programs are. In that, you'll notice it does have these places for NSF, being able to put maestro numbers, grants. Not everything has a number. And so all we ask you to do is put down what you know, if that makes sense. Because there are some gifts, some things that may not have numbers. So if you don't have data that goes in here, then that's fine. We encourage you to put it there if it's there. If you have a maestro number, you need to put it there. But if there isn't one, or isn't a federal agency grant number, don't worry about it, because we'll get calls towards the end. What if I don't have this number? Well, I'm going to tell you now, put down what you know. If you don't know it, then it's okay.
And if I can add to that, actually, the Maestro number is easy to find on Maestro, but the grant number might not be listed there. The funding agency grant number might not be listed on Maestro. Actually, if you check with SRS, contracts and grants, they can give you a summary of your grants with the funding numbers. So you can get help with that. And again, this is an appendix, so it might be a repetition of what you have included in the dossier, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good repetition actually, because it summarizes everything in just one place. Beside this appendix in the dossier, you're going to list the grants. It might be prudent to also have a table of the external, internal, industry type grants, summarized nicely, even though you're listing them individually in the dossier, right? So you're going to have sometimes 3 summaries of the grants in the same dossier, and it is not a bad thing.
Yes, yep, good. All right, so let's move on to external reviewer checklists. So it says appendices 4 and 5. So there are actually 2 checklists that we're going to ask you to go through. One is that you are going to be able to nominate people as a person going up for promotion. Again, this is only promotion, not midterm. You're able to nominate people to give letters. So there's a form that we may be able to show that. If not, it's in that faculty promotion place that I identified. There's a checklist for the candidate and a checklist for the department. So you will be able to nominate people for the to evaluate you. In addition to that, the department head will nominate people, and they will pull people from both lists to put them together to come up with who they are going to ask to write letters on your behalf. And there has to be representation from both lists as appropriate. We prefer to get as close to half and half as we can, but it's not always that way. But we will take people from both lists as we're going forward. With that in mind, I would say that there on the candidates list, there is a spot where you put do not contact. Okay, so who do you say you do not want to be reviewers, and that will be honored. We will not ask those people to be an external reviewer if you put those people's names down. Those external reviewers, so candidates submitted by the department or associate department head, as well as the candidate themselves, they must be what we call arm's length. And so we have actually broadened this, so we have a much broader list than the college, but it has to be 5 years since you have collaborated or been a co-author with that person. Not a co-worker in the past 5 years, not a business or professional partner, not a thesis, dissertation, or postdoc advisor, not a family friend, from a peer, needs to be from a peer or aspirational institute. That person needs to hold an academic rank higher than the candidate if they are a university institute. And they cannot be from the do not contact list. So what do we mean by these 2? From a peer review or aspirational institute. So San Angelo State would be an example of a aspirational institute. Texas Tech is in that group because they're not a land grant university. Peer would be a land grant university. But we are broadening that to other universities outside of the land grant system. In addition to that, we have opened that up to government agencies, so senior researchers in USDA, ARS, or the marketing service or whatever. But if they have a PhD, they're a senior researcher in those groups or some other institutions, but other institutions that we have allowed. And I'll explain how you see if that will allow something outside of the governmental system. And if they are from the university, some university, they have to be at a rank higher than the person. So if you're going up to be, if you're in promotion for associate professor, then that person has to be a professor or an associate professor to review you. If that person is, if you're going up for full professor, that person has to be a professor. So a candidate that you're seeking for has to be up to that level of rank within their university system. So what else do I need to add to that, Amir?
realize that actually some reviewers invited will not have time to review, and so they will let you know. So you might need to consider a longer list of like 10 to 12 to submit, because not everyone that you submitted will agree to provide a letter. So submit a longer list if you can.
Yeah, that's good.
There is a question from Sang Khan. Do we need to include publication grants and student mentoring before joining AgriLife?
Yes. You want to put your entire, we're going to look at the last 5 years for promotion of what you did, but it needs to be a chronological review of your case. But we're specifically going to look at 2 things. What have you done over the last 5 years? Are you on a trajectory for improvement? And then secondly, what have you done since you got to Texas A&M in that? That's a question. It's not like those other things do not count. They do count as part of the progression, but they're also going to ask those questions as to what have you done in the last 5 years, and what have you done, or since your last promotion, could say it that way too, or what have you done since you've joined Texas A&M AgriLife or AgriLife Research or Extension.
Yeah, and so try to give a subheading to what has been done prior to your appointment at AgriLife. And even when you do the summary of the grants, have a column for before joining A&M and after joining A&M or AgriLife. So again, if you look at an example dossier, you will find these things there.
Very good. So I would just finish with this one, is that if you have an institution or there have been some nonprofits, world organizations that we've been asked, if you have something that you're in doubt of as to whether that person from that institution counts, you contact your associate director. If you're AgriLife Research, you're going to contact Amir. If you're AgriLife Extension, you're going to contact me, and we will set up if we approve of that, we'll make sure that that is in writing and will be put and given to the peer review committee as we're going forward. So just know that if you have doubts about whether that person is qualified or not, the department head can talk with us, or their associate can talk with us about whether we feel like they fit or not. So now we're just looking at what, if you look, it says research extension expectations, promotion to associate. And I think the goal here is just to see that there's a progression. So we're going to expect more out of people seeking the level of full promotion than we would an associate professor. So you see it says demonstrate independence and scholarship, collaborative work is encouraged. So we want you to, it's important to show that you are a team player, but it's also important to say, what is my personal contribution in that team? So just to show the team's accomplishments, that's great, that's important. But to be able to say, in that team that accomplished that, this was my specific contribution to that effort. Then it talks about impact, demonstrate meaningful, national recognized impact in your field of research. And then also just among, as I said, among your state stakeholders. In extension, if you're having a group that's saying this person is doing a great job, and you can demonstrate that through grants and contracts and through publications, then we encourage that. Leadership, be recognized as a leader in your field, or be a strong and sustained trajectory to attain national leadership status. Statewide and regional leadership should be addressed. And so you're going to see those same things here, and it's just going to elevate it. So leadership is evidence. Instead of showing a trajectory, it's actually showing evidence of recognition as a leader regionally and nationally. So I won't go through all of those, but you'll see a progression in that. So research extension evaluations. So how the candidate has defined, developed, and positioned their scholarship and field of study throughout their career to achieve impact. So we're looking at how did you do it, not just what you did, but how you did it. That's important too. And who you asked, whether these things were important, and how do you establish impact is very important. Excellence in research, extension, productivity, and impact. So extramural funding is important. Number of quality, and impacts of publications. So in the world of extension, publications for us is not only refereed research journal articles. Just know that extension publications have equal importance with a refereed journal article. That's not the same in AgriLife research. Isn't that right, Amir?
Yes.
And your translational impacts, if there's awards, and then also just recognition within your of your program in your associations. So here's the point on teaching. So appropriate based as appropriate are based on position description and duties. So mentoring grad students, we expect everyone to mentor grad students. Expect everybody to demonstrate impact through their student outcomes. Sometimes it may be postdocs are equal to graduate students in some areas, particularly AgriLife research. That's an emphasis. For AgriLife research faculty with a joint appointments at a regional university, document teaching, but evaluation will be done through a separate process. That separate process will be evaluated by the department head. So service is important. So from our standpoint, when we look at AgriLife extension, service is to the department and to other organizations in the state, and then also organizations within their discipline. I would expect, just like we expect extension people to do applied research, we expect research people to do extension type work to some level. Outreach, they call that outreach and service, and that would extension activities. If you do extension activities, that would be considered service and outreach if you're an AgriLife research 100% employee. What else would fit in that, Amir, as far as service and outreach from the research side?
Well, again, even if you don't have a service component as part of the job description, you're still expected to provide service to the department or center, to the college or university, to the society that you're a member of, to the national community as a whole. So that is expectation is there, actually, even though you're going to be evaluating in AgriLife research, the main component you're going to be evaluated on is going to be research, but we also pay a lot of attention to service. And as you develop trajectory in research, you also need to develop a trajectory in service and recognition, because for you to be recognized at the national level, you need to begin by being recognized at the unit level, right? And then you develop a trajectory as you develop that skill. So my advice to you is to try to engage in service as much as you can. Being a section leader at a society, being an associate editor of a journal of some kind, serving on a panel for research proposals, things of that nature. This is an important aspect of the dossier.
So I think this is just a page that demonstrates a career ladder that we document. That is, if you go to that faculty and promotion page that we showed you at the beginning, there is this document linked there, and the March 2023 is still up to date for what we're looking for. It was revised in March of 2023, and it still holds. And so in that, it's going to talk about what we expect somebody that's an assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. This first one is a minimum. That everything after this, if we go down the column, this is just a matrix that's put in that career document. Everything down this column is what we would expect to see of somebody that's at their midterm level. So while the minimum is a doctor's degree as far as for associate professor, to make it there 5 years is what's recommended. Another 5 years for professor. If we look at the rest of the columns, there's a section that talks about program development and implementation. There's a list of things. You don't have to do them all, but you ought to be doing some of those activities as to what we would expect somebody at the midterm level to be doing at that point. And if they want to go up for associate professor, the question you should ask yourself, am I doing the things that are written in this column that have to do with associate professor? If I'm achieving these things that are written in this category, then I know that I am close to being able to go up at that point. Then you'll see that we also have faculty, staff, training, and assistance. So it goes through the different qualities. So training, extension personnel is important to us. Now, classroom instructions, I think it's important for us to really stop here for a minute. In this, and in your dossier, you'd use the same title where you talk about academic instruction and student mentoring and teaching. We do not expect, in fact, you're not allowed, if you're a 100% extension person, to teach a class without some sort of compensation for that, or within maybe even getting a teaching appointment. It's actually Smith-Lever does not allow that. And so, but we do expect, as really almost a service, you don't put this in service. Before we had this category, we would see the things that you're going to see here listed in 3 or 4 different places within the CV. And so we decided, well, let's pull these things in one place and call it academic instruction and student mentoring. In some cases, this is service. How is it service? Well, if I go teach a lecture in a livestock and meat marketing class like I used to, that is a service to my department, but it's also academic instruction. So I would put that under that category of academic instruction. If I'm mentoring graduate students, which I think is in here, so you're serving on university departments, so that's service. So let's go back. So graduate student education, you talk about the graduate students that you're mentoring. That would go in this academic instruction, student mentoring. Even though you don't have a teaching appointment, you do have a responsibility. There is an expectation for doing working with graduate students in the extension particularly. Then I would include that in this section within my CV, a section that's called academic instruction and student mentoring. Student mentoring, you could be doing a judging team. You could be doing a quiz bowl. All of those things would go into that category. You could be doing, we have many of our extension personnel that are doing study abroad. They're doing work study, and they're also doing tours that they take around, and they get Maymesters and things like that. So that would be a place that you would write this. And of course, if you do have a teaching an official teaching responsibility, you would include it in this section within your CV. So really it's more of the title, but this column tells you what are some things that might be considered academic teaching and instruction. And then we have service. And then I just put this list up to give you an idea of, I don't care if you're AgriLife Research or AgriLife Extension, you need to keep track of all of these kind of things. You know, fact sheets and referee journal articles and instruction manuals. If you're developing apps, if you're developing courses, those are things that you need to doing workshops or doing invited presentations at professional meetings. Those are all things that you need to be keeping a running tally, and you can do that in Interfolio 180. And I encourage you to do that. Now, this is AgriLife Research, so I'm going to turn this over to Amir. They have expectations just like we do with an extension.
Yeah, so this is on the website, right?
Yep. Yes.
So yeah, so we will have another workshop on the 29th of the month, I think, right? And so you're welcome to come back and join that again if you would like to. In the meanwhile, you can just check these guidelines on the website.
And in this, it does give some timelines that are a little different than extension, so I encourage you to look through it about while kind of the major difference, just so you know, in extension, we don't have a maximum number of years to go up. It's encouraged, but within AgriLife Research, it appears like there may be where we highly encourage you to go up by this time.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go. So this is the teaching. So we have talked with Dr. Klein again, and this is for people that have official academic teaching responsibilities. And this is what it says. It says for extension or research ad hoc faculty seeking promotion that have a minority teaching appointment or are teaching on an overload basis. Overload is where there's an arrangement for you to teach for a semester or over the summer, and they give you an added stipend to do that. The department head will evaluate the teaching performance of the candidate using the process described in the departmental guidelines for faculty evaluation in the teaching category. So every department has that has been approved by Faculty Affairs, which is outside of our group, but it's gone through an approval process as to what they are looking for in the teaching category. And so that's what the department head will use, what's in the teaching category within their specific department document to help evaluate that person's teaching responsibilities. I know, Amir, you worked in a department. How have you seen that worked out for real? Because of course I'm not a.
Well, again, the guidelines that you see on the website that we just shown, these are the AgriLife peer review guidelines. But there is a separate set of guidelines that belong to the department. And as Dr. Hale said, this is approved by Faculty Affairs. So if you have a teaching component, you're really advised to go and look at those guidelines. And so, the expectations, what you need to document in teaching, and so forth, that's a separate thing to look at in that departmental guidelines, which actually for O2 faculty members, there is a departmental guidelines, college guidelines, and then university guidelines, which take precedent. But in our case, we only have one set of guidelines, and that is AgriLife Research and Extension guidelines, which do not speak to teaching per se in details as the departmental guidelines do. So you might need to go and consult those guidelines for more details. But the bottom line is, we don't have two separate processes for the teaching for faculty who have a minority teaching component. It's just one process, and that teaching evaluation is going to be done by the department head, following the O2 guidelines in the department head department.
And quite often that might be a peer review that you're going to be asked to do, or teaching excellence courses that you're asked to go through. So every department's a little different. And so that's what Amir is talking about here. It says the department head will convey their assessments in the department head letter that is transmitted to the agency associate directors. The candidate will not go through, this is important, not go through the college promotion and tenure process, and will not go through the department P&T committee and for their teaching and the college peer review committee. Instead, the candidate will follow the AgriLife research and AgriLife extension promotion processes. The associate director will consider the candidate's teaching performance and their recommendation to the directors in their relationship to their overall position description. The directors will confer with the college executive associate dean, Dr. Klein in this case, before making a final decision regarding approval or denial of promotion. So if you have a teaching appointment, that's how that works. And again, just referring back to this, you'll see that there are a whole host of documents that, again, will help you. So just going through that, you have the promotion calendar is listed here. It's much more detailed than what we showed you in the schematic. Just the workshop hours are listed there. Particularly as you develop your dossier, then we would expect you to come, and it's a Q&A. We're not going to do any lectures. It's where you come and say, I have a question about this, and we'll answer that question. And if nobody shows up, after 15 minutes, which has happened, then we'll just go on to our business. But either Dr. Amir or I will be present at every one of those meetings. AgriLife research extension guidelines, that's the full description of the process that we just talked about in those flow diagrams that we showed you. There's the career ladder here. There's also, this is the AgriLife career ladder that we showed you as well. So I encourage you to, AgriLife research is here, as well as the career ladder for AgriLife extension. So I encourage you to look at those documents on the faculty AgriLife page, tenure and promotion page. All right, I'm gonna get out of this. May go back to it if we have specific questions so we can see each other, but be glad to answer any questions that you may have. All right, so what are we seeing in the chat?
We don't have any more questions in the chat.
All right, what questions do we have? I see Matt here. He turned his on. He may have already had his camera on the entire time. I didn't know because I couldn't see, but do you have a question specific, Matt?
No, I just want to say thank you for the training. It's been very helpful.
Good, thank you.
If I have only one advice to give, I would recommend that the candidate begin the process of putting together their dossiers as soon as they can. Right, the earlier you begin, the sharper, the better your dossier will look like.
What a great way to start the weekend, huh? Thinking about ocean. Y'all take care. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.